One. All right. My name is Anthony Gonzalez. I am a co-coordinator of the Puente project here at DVC, and I teach in the English department. I am absolutely honored to be here and to be co-coordinating this event along with my colleagues here. I would like to invite the Puente team to the front to please introduce themselves. And we have a special, let me fix my sound here. We have a special surprise guest new addition for you as well. So please, Puente team, introduce yourselves. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Moss. I'm a librarian here at DVC, and I teach our Puente Library Studies classes.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brianne Guerra Gutierrez, and I'm the program assistant for the Puente, Umoja, and Puma Center here on campus.
Muy buenos días a todos. My name is Brenda Gonzalez. I'm a Puente counselor and co-coordinator.
Muy buenos días. We're with Luis Valdez. Woo! And his beautiful wife, Lupe. And I am Maria Dorado. I am one of the Puente counselors, and I'm really excited to share space with you all ahora.
Hi, buenos días. My name is Monica Olmedo. I'm the new Puente English professor here at Valdez. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cristina Gomez. My pronouns are she, her, ella. And I'm a counseling faculty intern with Puente.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Professor Albert Puente, and I teach the Latinx politics class in American government along with the Puente team. And also I teach Black politics in American government. My class is here right now, and just looking forward to this. And I also co-direct our social justice program and ethnic studies. So we're building ethnic studies.
Thank you, Puente team. We have such a powerful team, a dynamic team here. I'm so happy that we have everyone to contribute to events like these. I want to give a shout out to our Cycle 29 Puentistas sitting right in the front with their notebooks. Give it up for our Puentistas. I want to give a shout out to our Phase 3 Puentistas. I want to give a shout out to our guests, including some folks from Umoja who came through. I see Communication Studies is in the house. Some of my colleagues from English are here. Thank you for your support. We are going to get started with our program today, and I am extremely excited and proud to begin with some student leaders. So for a little bit of context, in the Puente English courses, I almost forgot one of the most important things. One of the team members is not here right now. We just introduced most of the team, and Professor Patrick Leong cannot be here. There's only one reason why he would miss this event, and that is because his daughter is currently in labor with his grandson. He wants to be there for her. He's a major support. He's watching, he's gonna watch the recording, so give it up. So Professor Leong and I teach the Puente English courses, and welcome to Monica, who's going to be the newest Puente English professor as well. And we incorporate culturally relevant curriculum into our courses that focus on the Chicano and Latino communities. It has been a long-standing tradition for us to teach the play Zoot Suit and to do a unit on Luis Valdez's writing, his work with Teatro Campesino, and the issues that he explores in his writing. But the people that are in a better position to talk to you about what they learned are the students themselves. So I am so proud and honored to welcome two guest student speakers. I want to give it up first. Please welcome Raul Arana. Give it up.
Hey, there's other people here. Hello, my name is Raul Arana. I'm a psychology major, a part of the Puente program, and a part of Professor Gonzalez and Counselor Maria's cohort. I want to thank Luis Valdez for taking the time to be here. I think it's really an honor to have someone with such a historic past taking the time to talk to us. And I think it's really important what you teach about the history of this country and what our past generations went through. So thank you. Luis Valdez's directing and acting has impacted me personally, since the stories told I see as representations of the history and historic events that have taken place within this country. As a kid, I remember watching La Bamba with my dad, and remember watching and viewing Richie as a promising figure, one that I wanted to grow up to be. Now being able to rewatch the movie, I was able to understand the real significance of the difficulties that he had to overcome. This newfound feeling for the movie has created such a significant meaning to me in the way that it portrays the two most important aspects of being a minority in this country. With the character Bob representing how society views and thinks of us as criminals who will amount to nothing in life, and Richie representing the potential and the best form of ourselves that we strive to be. Both of these characters, although different, faced the same challenges when it came to discrimination. But what stood out to most was the way that how each of them dealt with the problem. As Bob found it best to drink his problems away and become a drug dealer figure that society expected him to be, while his brother Richie used his talents to prove to all the critics that his music went farther than just jungle music. The same thing can be said for the play Salute Suit, which saw the main character, Henry Reyna, portrayed as a criminal, one that didn't have a future in anything but crime and violence. Both carry this symbolic message and story of history that we as Chicanos and Latinos have faced throughout the years. For my Puente English 123 class, I wrote an essay that started with these lines. Embedded in the cracks of the sidewalk in which the United States was built is a long history of oppression, discrimination, and racism to those of minority race. A history that seems to have no end and keeps repeating itself throughout the years. Activism and peaceful protest have been a way for those minorities to be heard. Yet the action that carries the most sentimental value is the art of storytelling. Through storytelling, whether it's the form of writing or acting, the pain and emotions are felt and passed on to those who read or view the stories of oppression minorities have faced. It's easy to forget that during these times, countless of older generations that lived during this time had also witnessed the introduction of California as a part of the United States. Although not chosen to be a part of this country, they have faced with all sorts of discrimination, including colonization, with almost 250,000 Mexican Americans found living in small neighborhoods known as barrios. The splitting of culture between barrios and the rest of the Los Angeles city caused this sort of division, which saw the curiosity of a younger generation of Chicanos wander and explore the city of Los Angeles. Luis Valdez is one of those writers who was and still can implement the events that marked the Chicano and Latino communities, especially during the Chicano movement in the 1960s and 70s. And having such a symbolic past in the community as Luis Valdez means a lot. Puente as a program has helped teach us that the symbolic meaning of what it means to be Chicano and Latino. What I like the most is that they continue to teach what generations before us had to go through with books and movies such as the one Luis Valdez wrote. I think it's important to know how we reached the point where we are now. Thank you.
Thank you, Raul. So happy to hear those words. Very proud of you. But we're not done there. We have another Puentista who is a student leader and speaker that we want to invite to the front. So let's give it up for Kimberly Alvarez.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Kimberly Alvarez. I am a Psycho 29 Puentista and a future Puente tutor with Professor Leong and Ms. Brenda. My major is kinesiology and I'm working towards a career in athletic training. I wanted to start off by saying that I feel honored to have the opportunity to share a few words regarding my experience with reading Luis Valdez's work. Reading works such as Los Vendidos and I don't have to show you no stinking badges has helped me gain an appreciation for the importance of being true to oneself. As a Mexican American, there has been times when I have felt the pressure to assimilate, whether it be in past English classes or history classes in which I did not see people like me or hear any mention about things that I could relate to. I wanted to relate to what we were talking about, which made me think about changing my own personal beliefs so I could be included in the conversation. Los Vendidos also made me realize how the government and society preach about embracing and wanting diversity, but in reality just want people like them. People who look like them to a certain degree and have the same values and beliefs. It makes me question how free an individual can really be. If a Mexican American is too Mexican or doesn't have the same views as an American, would they be able to be part of a successful political party? I think a common theme between the two plays is the struggle to find one's identity and being true to oneself. And I don't have to show you no stinking badges. We can see middle-class parents doing their best to be able to provide and give everything to their children. They see their own hopes and aspirations in their children, which puts a big pressure on us as the children of immigrant parents. Personally, I feel the pressure to make my parents proud. I mean, why wouldn't I want to make them proud? They came here to give me and my siblings a brighter future with more opportunities. They left behind part of their life, for example, people they love that they will most likely never be able to see again. But does that give them the right to decide my future? When Sonny tells his parents, Connie and Buddy, that he never wanted to be a lawyer after dropping out from Harvard to pursue acting, they were clearly upset. They tell him that he threw their dreams, hopes, and aspirations out the window. But then where do Sonny's dreams, hopes, and aspirations stand? I have heard from multiple people that are in school saying, well, my parents want me to study and do something in my life. That's why I'm still in school. One thing that I can really appreciate from my parents is that they have always supported me in all that I do. Whether it's me saying I want to be a nurse, a pediatrician, sonographer, or athletic trainer, they have always encouraged me to push me to work for what I want. My mom always tells me, no importa lo que decidas hacer, lo que importa es que sepas que te vas a levantar todos los días feliz porque estás haciendo lo que tú quieres. Don't do it for me or for your dad, do it for yourself. We're going to be proud of you regardless of what you choose to do in life. Sonny deciding to drop out to pursue his own dreams shows a step of discovering who he is and his purpose. In Act 1, Scene 2, he says, I finally discovered my real purpose in life, Dad. Again, showing the importance of figuring out who you are and what you want to do in your life despite having the pressure of making those around you proud. I also wanted to touch a little bit on the talk that Luis Valdez gave at UC Berkeley about the power of zero. That whole talk was very powerful, and if you guys haven't listened to it, I would highly recommend it. Something that Luis Valdez said that stuck out to me was, I have roots that go into this continent that's 10,000 years deep. And only to the lies and distortions of people who would oppress us have I been led to believe that I am less than what I am. It made me think back to Los Vendidos and how the people that were being stereotyped were seen as less. They were put into a category and not seen as anything else other than the category they were placed in. There is much more to these people. They are human and are worth more than what they are shown to be. Breaking the stereotypes that people have made about Mexicans to belittle them is important. They are not just borrachos, thieves, or farm workers. They are much more. To wrap it up, I want to thank Luis Valdez for being here and for pushing through and filling the hole that he felt in his chest as a first grader as he saw his town receding into the fog. Despite the anger and sadness that he may have felt when he and his family were kicked out of their home, he filled this hole with hope, dreams, courage, and aspirations, and became a very successful and inspiring playwright. He turned the negatives in his life into positives and is now an inspiration to many. It is up to us to decide how we want to live our lives, but always remember to embrace your identity, your culture, and where you come from.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Raul. So proud of you. So happy that you did that. Luis Valdez is regarded as one of the most important and influential Chicano and American playwrights living today. Valdez founded the internationally renowned and Obie Award-winning theater company El Teatro Campesino, the Farm Workers Theater, in 1965. Shout out to the baby in the back. In the heat of the United Farm Workers' struggle for improved labor conditions and the Great Delano Grape Strike in California's Central Valley. His early involvement with the UFW and the early Chicano movement left an indelible mark that remains embodied in all his work, even after he left the UFW in 1967. His earliest plays were written to encourage campesinos, farm workers, to leave the fields and join the United Farm Workers, encouraging mobilization and organization among exploited laborers whose role in the US economy is vital. His play, I Don't Have to Show You No Stinking Badges, explores urban Chicano life and issues around assimilation and acculturation, while Corridos is a re-envisioning of classic Mexican folktales. His most famous and enduring play is Zoot Suit, a work that dramatizes the Sleepy Lagoon trial of 1942, including the mass arrests of Chicano youth by the Los Angeles Police Department and the ensuing so-called Zoot Suit riots, in which US servicemen targeted and brutalized Chicano youth for their supposed anti-American style of dress and manner of speech. Zoot Suit is widely considered a masterpiece of American theater and was the first Chicano play on Broadway and the first Chicano major feature film directed by Valdez, by the way. Valdez's most famous and iconic film was the 1987 classic La Bamba, a biography that chronicles the rise to fame and sudden death of a young Chicano rock and roll star. The film explores themes of machismo and masculinity in the framework of working class Chicano families, as well as the pressure to assimilate and the sacrifices necessary for a talented and dedicated young Chicano to succeed in mainstream US society. By the way, it's my all-time favorite movie. And as a 6-year-old, I used to play air guitar, jump off the couches. I can recite the movie line for line. And when I hear, I'll do it in class on Monday. And when I hear any one of the songs featured in the movie, I am transported back to my childhood. As a lover of literature, as a Puente English professor who believes in the value of culturally relevant curriculum that focuses on our Latino and Chicano communities, as a product of 2 parents who were steeped in the Chicano movement, I mean, my sister was in Teatro Campesino as a high school theater student. I am absolutely honored to introduce the legendary Luis Valdez.
Okay, wonderful. Well, what a pleasure to be still here. You know, I love the Latino Heritage Month celebration here because my comments now will be about herencia. And it's really important that we recognize what our heritage is all about. It's our inheritance. And it is an inheritance that my generation is passing on to yours, and that your generation will pass on to those that come after you. It's not an unusual process. It's called human civilization. But you know, as Mexicanos, as people of color, as indígenas, as women, and what have you, as farm workers, we have been sold a bill of goods that we have no real heritage, that we're culturally deprived, and that we have no background. Well, that is a total distortion. That is a lie meant to weaken us and to keep us in our place so that we don't leave the fields and serve the ag industry that is at least 1/3 of the economy of this state, a multi-billion-dollar industry known as agribusiness. Now, I have been acquainted with agribusiness because of our heritage as farm workers. And I want to go back to some images and stories here that relate to my upbringing, what I will share with you. And I was born in 1940 in a labor camp in Delano, California. My parents had come from Arizona back in the 1920s as kids, but they had been trucked in actually and brought in by railroad back in the 1920s when California was expanding its agricultural industry. That meant cotton, king grape, and everything else in between. You know, all of the prunes and apricots and tomatoes and sugar beets and asparagus that you can name that campesinos have learned to harvest was in the offing then as California was discovering its destiny as the breadbasket of America. But in my case, I mean, I didn't know any of that, of course. I was born in this labor camp in Delano, which is where Highway 99 is now. And they rammed it through back in the 1950s and destroyed the labor camp. But my mom took me to see it before it was torn down. And I was a little disappointed. It was part of several shacks that were sitting on this lot. They were all empty. They were all been abandoned. And she took me into one of them. It was a little 2-room shack. And the front room served as a living room and a bedroom. And then there was a kitchen that was open to the backyard. I think they had a wooden stove. And all that was left was a metal frame of a double bed. And no mattress, just the frame. And my mother took me and stood me in front of the bed. And she said, "Aquí, mijo, aquí naciste. This is where you were born." And I was not impressed. But in any way, it happened to be my grandmother's little shack, because she had gone to Tulare County Hospital 2 weeks before, and I had not been born, you know, so they released her, and she ended up going to my grandmother's end, and that's where I was born, in this labor camp. Now, my grandparents lived in this labor camp on the west side of Delano, and my grandmother's sister had her family living in 2 little shacks across the street. In 1941, a family arrived from Arizona, and they came to work in the fields, and they had 2 teenage boys. One was CC, and the other was Rookie. And they did some electrical work, you know, for my grandmother's sister, and they fixed the place up. Now, I was only 1 year old. I didn't know what the hell was happening. Actually, my father had taken up the ranch of a Japanese-American farmer who had been evicted from his ranch and put into a concentration camp, you know, in Arizona with his whole family. I later wrote a play about this called Valley of the Heart. But the fact is that, I mean, I wasn't aware of this. I was a 1 year old. And, but this family came and moved across the street, and they had 2 teenage boys, CC and Rookie. And I will come back to them. What happened then is that World War II, for me, I grew up on my dad's ranch. You know, it was called Pancho's Rancho. And we were in the outside of Delano. And I didn't know World War II was happening. I knew we lived on a ranch. And my earliest memories of the 2 houses that we had on the ranch, we had the barn, we had mules that we were farming. My dad was farming with my abuelo. And it turns out that my dad was farming for the for the US Army. After they had evicted the Japanese farmer and his family and put them in a concentration camp, they turned to the farm workers that worked on that ranch. My dad was one of them, and said, "Who wants to run the ranch?" And my dad ended up picking up the opportunity. And so what I thought was our ranch didn't really belong to us. And so it didn't come apparent to me that this was a fact until the end of the war. And all the price supports that my dad had been receiving from the US Army to grow whatever they wanted, vegetables mostly, occasionally fruit. But we used all kinds of labor. Some of the first braceros that came from Mexico were working for us on the ranch. Not only that, German prisoners of war, you know, these are Nazis that were working for us in the field. In Kern County, Tulare County, as it turned out. So it was with a rude awakening then at the end of the war, for me, that we lost the ranch. And we were suddenly back on the migrant path. And it's 1946, and it's after the war. And I couldn't believe it. I said, "Wait a minute." I told my older brother, "What happened? You know, we used to be rich." And he laughed. He said, "We weren't rich." You know, and he kind of blamed my dad for losing the ranch. But really, my dad had no choice. You know, he didn't own it. It had been handed to him. He did his war service because he was a family man already, but he did his war service growing crops for the US Army. All my uncles went to war, man. They went to the Pacific. They went to Europe. Some were wounded. And, you know, we paid our dues. Some were killed. We paid our dues in World War II. And I remember when they came home. That's some of my earliest memories. A brown bus came down. We were in Early Mart, a little town next to Delano. And they unloaded, they got down, and all these World War II vets were coming out of the bus and back home from the war. These were stirring memories for me. I still fixate on World War II as a pivotal point for me and my whole family. So I write a lot about that. Zoot Suit dealt with that period. Valley of the Heart, my other play, dealt with those periods because these were formative years. As it turns out, because it was World War II, it was tremendously dynamic in California. One of the things that happened is with the exclusion and the deportation of so many Japanese American farmers who were doing very well, by the way, with their families. They were competing with the Anglo farmers, and the Anglo farmers wanted them out of the way. Once they got them out of the way, they needed a labor force. So this is when the braceros came in, and the Mexicans later that were undocumented also came in. So it changed California. It brought perhaps some of your families into Califa. But as a migrant farm worker, I remember traveling all over California, all the way from the orange groves in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, all the way up to Santa Rosa, and all the way in between, and especially the Santa Clara Valley. You know, California had about 6 million people in 1940 when I was born. 750,000 of those were Latinos. They had 120,000 Japanese, another 100,000 Chinese, you know, fewer than that, African Americans. But it was already like multicultural and multilingual and multiracial. California, it was empty. And, you know, we're at 39 million now, going to 40, and 16 million of those are Latinos. So we're the majority, you know, we're coming to the majority of the state, and that freaks out a lot of people. But we were here before. We were here before, and as indigenas, we were here before that, you know. We were here with the Ohlone, the Kumeyaay, all the way down to Tijuana, the Kumeyaay, the Tongo Indians in San Gabriel, the Costonoans over here, the Costeños, all the Ohlone, the Miwoks, you know, everybody, you know, that is in California in some way has been touched by the indigenas, especially the Mexicanos, because they intermarried. They intermarried and became part of us. So now we have a lot of Native American Indians with names like Martinez and Gonzalez, and they're part of us, and we're part of them. So in a way, we're rooted in California. You know, we're not strangers. We've been here for 10,000 years. We've been here for 20,000 years. We've been in America because we are America. But I didn't know any of that when I was a kid. So we came all the way to the Garden of Eden, which was the Santa Clara Valley, to pick prunes, to pick cotton. And you know, it was amazing. My dad used to take us to the missions because they were free. We go visit the Spanish missions, you know, aquí está tu herencia. This is your heritage. It was always a wonder for me. Santa Clara Mission was beautiful. San Jose Mission was practically a ruin, but we used to come up what is now 680, you know, and that was a wonderful road. I remember being able to see the whole bay. There weren't any houses up there, no trees. It was just the flatlands leading into the bay, and you could see the water, and it was incredible. California was beautiful then. It's still beautiful. But the fact is that fewer people, a lot of fewer people. So we came and worked in the Garden of Eden that summer of 1946. And at the end of the harvest season, my dad wanted to reward us. So we went to Santa Cruz. Now, this was the first time that I or my brothers and my sisters had been to the Pacific Ocean. We came from the inside valley. You know, they say Mexicans are a whole race of people with their backs to the sea. That's been said before. So we weren't used to see the sea or the bay or anything, but we did go to Santa Cruz, and it was amazing to walk into the waves and to eat on the beach. And we went to the boardwalk, you know, which was there. It was fantastic. And my brother, who was older than me, 3 years, took off to all the rides. And I was 6 years old, and I wanted to do something, you know. But then my dad bought us balloons. He bought us a helium balloon, me and my sister. And it was great, man. It was a red balloon. How fantastic, you know, look at this thing. And I was mesmerized by it. My mom went off with my other sister and came back with some hot dogs, you know. And I looked at the hot dogs. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. And I got my hot dog. And then I said, what? Oh, and there goes my balloon. And they couldn't afford to buy me another one. So that was it. Adios, you know. Goodbye to my globo, you know, goodbye to my little balloon. But it was painful. All I could do was bite into my hot dogs and watch my balloon go up into heaven. I learned a very important lesson that day. that has stayed with me all these years. That if you're real careful, you can have your dreams and eat them too. Okay? And that's really important. Respect and honor your dreams. Don't give them up. Fight for them. Achieve them. This is what motivates you. We're all that 6-year-old child. That 6-year-old child is still in me. And it's verified by what happened next. We went back into the valley to pick cotton in a place by Corcoran, which was on the shores of what used to be Tulare Lake. Tulare Lake is back in the San Joaquin Valley. But the fact is that in those days, I mean, it was all cotton. They drained the lake and they put in cotton. Someone made millions of dollars, billions now, planting cotton. And they used the workforce. They used the workforce composed of all the minorities, not just Mexicans then. They had African Americans from the South. They had Sikhs from India with their turbans, They had Japanese Americans that were just coming out of the concentration camps, working in the fields. The inevitable Okies. We had white people out there. I grew up with Okies, And then the fact is that it seemed to me the whole world were cotton pickers. So I felt all right about it. I'm a cotton picker, but then so is the whole world, Now, of course, it's practically all Mexicans, but they don't even pick cotton anymore. They were taken over by machines in the 50s. But the fact is that we were staying there at this labor camp, living in a tent. There were like 2,000 people there during the highlight of the season. And then the season ended because there were so many hands right away and people moved out. And so we were still there because my dad's truck, a little pickup, had broken down and he had it up on blocks and my tío was helping him trying to fix it. And we couldn't get out. Now, farm workers live from hand to mouth. If you didn't work that day, you weren't going to eat that day. You were paid in cash in those days, paid in 50-cent pieces so that you could feel it, Again, it's a way to manipulate you. But anyway, we used to get this money and go to the grocery store to buy our food. Well, the season was over. No money was coming in. We went to the San Joaquin River and began to fish. Every morning we would go out there. My dad and my brother and I would go out there to fish for our dinner, And we catch some fish and take it to my mom. We were eating fish tacos before it was trendy, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, what happened one morning, I fell into the river and I almost drowned. I mean, I have vivid memories of falling into the river and then like grasping for straws and I couldn't grab anything to hold me. So I started going into the ditch. I went down, 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 down. I had my hands went up and I had this image of me going into the water and basically drowning. And before I knew it, something grabbed me, my dad grabbed me by the hair and he pulled me out like a fish, Now he saved me. But the fact is that my mother got terrified. She said, well, maybe you and your brother, tu hermano, váyanse a la escuela, It's a yellow bus that used to come into the camp. So we got into the camp, into the bus and went to the nearby school called Stratford. Not Stratford on Avon, Stratford on the San Joaquin, okay? And the thing is that we used to take our own lunch. My mother commandeered a little brown paper bag. In 1946, there were still paper shortages. It's incredible because there's so much now in California. There's so much abundance here. You go into the supermarket, it's incredible. It wasn't like that. They had shortages. I remember the shortages during World War II. They couldn't get meat without the little buttons. But the thing is that my mom got this little bag. It was my size. And she used to put the tacos in there. She got a couple of eggs and made, egg tacos or frijoles, whatever. And we took them to school. And the school had no cafeteria. Everybody brought their own lunch. Some of the Anglo kids had lunch pails, with Hopalong Cassidy on the side. And they were emblazoned. And me dio pena, I was ashamed of my little taco bag and my mama's tacos. It was nice and warm when I was going to school on the bus in the morning. By lunchtime, it was cold. Y los tacos were kind of chateados. You know how the tacos do, So I was a little embarrassed. So I used to sneak them up out of the bag, without exposing it all. And I'd be over here eating. And the Anglo kids would say, what are you eating? No. Let me see. No, And they were eating sandwiches. At glass over there, they had these two looked like two pieces of white board. Actually, it was white bread. And then with ham and tomato and lettuce. I said, híjole, look at that. They're eating sandwiches. And they kept looking at our tacos. And every day they'd look and I'd look at them and they'd look at my lunch and they'd look at their lunches. And one day the inevitable happened. We exchanged lunches. And the rest is Taco Bell history. Yeah, I discovered, wow, they like our food. That's interesting. They like our food. But the fact is, I saved the bag and fold it, put it in the closet, and I pick it up at the end of the day. One day, the bag was missing. And I couldn't find it. And the bus was going to leave. So I was panicking. The teacher saw me. She says, "What do you need?" And I told her, "Oh, a little brown paper bag." I took it. And I said, "Well, give it back." She says, "I can't." And she escorted me into a little room in the back. And there was my bag all ripped up and floating in a basin of water. I said, "Me lleva la que me trajo." The maestra went crazy, you know, she went berserk. She ripped up my bag. And she says, "No, no, look at this." And she get in there, grabbed a piece of the bag, dipped it into some paste, and then put it on a mold. It was the first time I noticed it, a clay mold. It was an animal. It was a monkey. And then she put another piece and smoothed it out, another piece and smoothed it out. And she says, "Do you want to try it?" "Yeah." And so I got in there, got a little bag, smoothed it out. And at that moment, I discovered one of the secrets of the universe. It's called paper mache. That you can take any newspaper, any paper bag, put it in paste, and it'll harden and become whatever you put it on, what shape you want. That was incredible. What an amazing revelation to me, because there was paper everywhere. There are old newspapers. I could do that. But then, okay, I wondered, what's this for? Why are you making a mask? It was past Halloween. It was November. And she says it's for a play. And it's a Christmas play. It's called Christmas in the Jungle. And the whole school is involved. We even have the band. The 8th graders are involved. And we need 2 first graders to play monkeys. So I said, "Aquí estoy, mano, right here," you know? So I forgave her about the bag and auditioned, and I got my first role in the theater. It was amazing. I got the role of a monkey, man. And then, you know, I got a costume that was better than my own clothes. I'm telling you. I had a little green chaleco, you know, some red pants with a tail, you know, some red shoes, a little hat, you know, and then the mask that the teacher made out of Mama's taco bag, which she painted beautifully. I put that thing, man, I looked at myself in the mirror. I was like a creature from another world. I said, "Wow, look at me. I'm gonna have my debut before the world." Now, my cousins were still in the camp with us. So when I was gonna perform, I was gonna perform for them, as my mom and dad. This was it, man. This was my entry into the world. The week of the performance, I came home from school and my mom says, "We're leaving tomorrow." And I said, "But," it was like a Tuesday. And I said, "My mom, the play's on Friday." And she says, "I know, mijo, but we're being evicted and we have no choice." So I cried. She cried with me, but that was it. A huevo. The next morning at daybreak, my dad got the truck started somehow. We climbed into the back and we pulled out of the camp and passed the little town where the school was. And it was the San Joaquin Valley fog that was coming in. And I'll never forget feeling this hole open up in my chest. Now, it could have destroyed me. I was 6 years old. We just lost a farm. Now I was losing my debut before the world. And, but you know, I took 3 things with me. One was my unrequited love of the theater. That was one. The other was the secret of paper mache. And the other was my residual anger because we had been evicted from the labor camp. I couldn't think of an injustice that was greater than that we had been kicked out. And the fact is, the hole is still there. But for over 75 years, I have been pouring plays. I have been pouring, you know, poems, music, movie scripts. The hole is much smaller now, but it's still there. So I've always believed you can turn a negative into a positive. Years later, I was talking to a conference of superintendents in Monterey, and the president, at that time, the present superintendent of the Stratford School District heard this story. And so he went back and checked the records. The old school was being torn down. So he sent me a brick of the old school. And then also a photostatic copy of the handwritten attendance record for 1946. And down at the bottom of the first grade, it said Louis Valdez, a child who had been in that school for 30 days. That was it. I was there for 30 days, in and out. And they changed my life. At the top of the page was the name of the teacher that I had never remembered. Her name was Ruth Tremaine. And God bless Ruth Tremaine, man, because I don't know if she ever realized what she had done. She launched me on my career She gave me the raison d'etre of my life. She turned me into an actor, and as a consequence, into a playwright, and into a director, and into a filmmaker. So it all goes back to that childhood experience, the 6-year-old. And each and every one of us has a 6-year-old inside. There must be some motivating story, some event in your life. It doesn't have to be 6, could be 7, could be 8, you know. But that's the story of my determination to do theater. I never lost the need to do theater. I'd get together with my cousins and we would stage little plays wherever. I remember the Christmas jungle, you know, it made fake trees. Any empty barn would work for me. I would put up trees and you know, work making masks. And my cousins worked with me for a while. They enjoyed it, but that's why they got bored. They said, well, we don't know what to say, you know. I said, well, here, say this. I wrote one line, you know, and then more and more, by the time I was 7 years old, I was writing one-page scripts and handing it to them. Then they got tired and quit on me. So I made puppets, the hell with it. The puppets could never quit on me, you know. I had 2 manos, okay, vamos a hacer, you know. And so in my grandfather's garage back in early March, my older brother helped me set up a stage. It was an upside down cardboard box with a hole cut on the side. We put a little curtain, we put a light bulb in it, you know, and we went to work, man. And one of my first, we were picking potatoes at the time by Bakersfield. And I found this papa that looked like a human face, you know what I mean? To me, I working in the field, you're still a little kid. So you look at the papa, I say, God, this looks like a person, you know? And so I took it home. It was a big papa with a nose and ears. And so we took it and it became one of my first puppets. I could stick my finger in it, you know, with a glove. And I had, so that became a character called Papota, you know? And at that time, the movie Viva Zapata had just come out. You know, it was starring Marlon Brando as Emiliano Zapata. And so I decided to do a turn on that. And so it was about this monster, Papota, who comes to town to get all the children and to after them because of all the papitas that have been made out of papas, you know, I mean, they've destroyed papas everywhere. So this Papota wanted revenge, you know? And so the one that rescued the town was this other character that I used carrying one of my dad's old boots. I turned the boot upside down so that the sole was up here. And so he became the nemesis of the Papota, you know, and they fought, and the papa was defeated by the boot. And so all of the other characters stood around saying, Viva Zapato, Viva Zapato, you know. Anyway, those are the ruminations of a little kid, you know what I'm saying? By that time I was 12. But the thing is that idea of being able to express my own reality, I have my own play. I even started charging, by the way. Now we have the Teatro Campesino in San Juan Bautista a few years ago. Someone came and said, you know, I saw your puppet plays. And I paid my nickel too. I said, "Guy, cabrón, I didn't realize I was charging a nickel, you know." But anyway, I was in show business, man. So the thing is that we come out of our own reality. And if you maintain your 6-year-old inside of you, your creativity, you can turn it into magic, you know. My grandparents saw that. One more story. I was in the 3rd grade. I was 8 years old. And, you know, I had a teacher who was just out of college. She must have been first year. She was blonde, she was beautiful. And she had a thing going with a 6th grade teacher who had the shop for all the sixth grade boys, you know. And so one day she walks into our classroom, 3rd grade, with a truck. Now, during World War II, there were no metal trucks. There were no plastic trucks. They were all wood. These are toys. And so she brought in this yellow truck, stake truck, that I used to work in, you know, I used to see that, and put it on her desk. And she put it up there, and we all locked and, you know, ooh, look at this thing. And she says, this has been made by the 6th graders. It was given to me by the teacher, Mr. Armstrong. And at the end of the month, we're going to award it to the best behaved boy in class. Now, the girls were out of the running, very sexist times, you know. So, but I looked at this truck. Now, everybody in the class knew that she had a pet student. Name was Jimmy. I think it was Jimmy. Anyway, Jimmy this and Jimmy that. And so, but I looked at my competition. Besides Jimmy, I said, I think I can do this. I love school, you know, and I was a good student. I think maybe I can pull this off. I thought, you know. And so the month came in, and I used to do my homework, hand in my papers. But you know, Jimmy was an obvious favorite. She was a class monitor, and he would hand out all of the papers that the teacher wanted. And I said, geez, I got to break through this. One day, before the teacher came into the classroom, Jimmy got on top of his desk and was horsing around. You know what I mean? And the teacher came in and saw him. He says, Jimmy, get down. So Jimmy got down, but I thought, yeah, chingue, you know, I'm in, man. And so at the end of that day, I went to her desk and I said, teacher, do you think I could be monitor like Jimmy tomorrow? And she got real serious and said, sit down, Louis. I said, yeah. She said, well, you know, Jimmy is the son of a grower in our area. He owns a big ranch, and he employs a lot of people. And when Jimmy grows up, he'll probably inherit his daddy's ranch, and he's going to have to give orders to a lot of people. Your father is a farm worker, and your father has probably worked for Jimmy's dad, which is true. And someday you're probably going to work for Jimmy. So it's better that we leave things as they are. Let him be the monitor. And I said, man, I said, okay, teacher. So I didn't complain, but I was mad, man. I was angry. So I ran out of the school. It was after school. I ran home, enrabiado, you know, as angry as you can get at 8-year-olds. And so I went over to my grandpa. He had a little shop in the back he'd made, because, you know, people took care of their own repairs in those days. Whatever broke down, you could fix it. My abuelito had hammers and saws and wood pile and mason jars full of screws and nails and stuff. And so I went to him and asked my abuelito, can I use your shop? He said, ¿pa qué? So I'm going to build a truck. Ooh, okay. So I went to work, man. I got his permission. I went to his wood pile. I found a 2x4. You know, I got it out, cut it to shape. I got other pieces of paper around. I got the tops of mayonnaise jars, you know, for the tires, and I've nailed them on. I got the tops of Coca-Cola bottles for the headlights. You know, I put stakes on it. It began to fall into shape. And the more I worked on it, the better it got, you know. It was a little wobbly, you know, but nevertheless, it came together. And then it was time to paint it. So I went to my grandfather's stash. I was looking for some yellow paint. Nope, no yellow, pink. Ni modo, vámonos. So I painted it pink and black with black highlights. And as I was finished painting it, my grandfather came in and said, hijo, mira, es un troque. Yeah, es una camioneta, yeah. He said, ay, pues qué bien, ahora limpia, you know. So I cleaned up and I brought it home. My parents were amazed. They were very supportive. My dad said, you did this? I said, yeah, hijo. And my mom says, mijito, qué bien, you know. And she put it there in the living room, my little truck. After that, I was inspired, man. I made cars. I used to go shopping for bamboo. I mean, out in the riverbanks. I made airplanes. Used to hang them from the ceiling. My cousin said, mira, Louis has an Air Force, you know. And the thing is that I learned then that I could make things with my own hands. So the moral of the story is, when in doubt, build your own damn truck. You know what I'm saying? And that is the story. Yeah, you can give an applause on that one. Yeah. And that's the whole story behind the Teatro Campesino. The fact is that 20 years, roughly, after being evicted from that labor camp, I went to Cesar Chavez and pitched him an idea of a theater of by and for farm workers. By this time, I had been educated in college. I was an English major also, and dominar el inglés, like I say, but I had an emphasis in theater. So I had studied the theater of the turn of the century. I had studied the theater of the 1930s. I was very impressed by the political aspect of the 1930s theater. And as an added note, I began to study Mexican theater too, on my own, Teatro Tepache during the Mexican Revolution. And so the thing is that I had this idea then that I wanted to work in with my people. After the puppets, I became a ventriloquist. It's a long story, but I had two dummies. One was an Anglo, because that was a Jerry Mahoney dummy. So I called him Ali Nelson, but he was very, very cool. He was a cool Anglo, you know. And I had a Mexican puppet that I made, a dummy, Marcelino Pipin. And one would sit on one knee and the other would sit on the other knee. And they would argue, and I say, come on, guys, cut it out. Don't argue, you know? And the thing is that I had a bilingual, what I was doing, I was working out my contradictions, that I could be as Anglo as I wanted with Ali, but he was cool. And I could be as Mexicano, talking in Spanish con Marcelino Pipin, you know? I was inspired by Paco Miller. He was the one that brought Tintan to the world, but he was a ventriloquist. He had Don Roque. I saw him perform in a farm workers theater in Mendota when I was a kid. And that impressed me. Wow, a Mexican puppet, a Mexican dummy. And the thing is that these are all formative experiences. It ended me on television, live television, 1956, when KNTV became it's now the NBC affiliate in the Bay Area. But KNTV came as an independent studio in San Jose. They had a half hour in Spanish on Sundays. And I did the first 5 minutes in the inaugural broadcast. It was so popular, they invited me back and I became a permanent feature for 18 weeks until we were canceled. But the thing is that I was on television. I was living with my family on a dirt street that would turn into a muddy bog in East Salsipuedes in San Jose, but I was on television. Now that made me class president in high school, you know? So one thing I learned that the arts were also another avenue that would get me into politics, that could get me some advances, you know, in society at large. And so all these principles came to bear. But the one thing that I did as a ventriloquist is perform in the labor camps. I used to take my dummies and perform for the campesinos. Out of that came the idea, well, why not do more than ventriloquists? Why not put on plays? And so I decided then that plays were my avenue back to my roots. And so to satisfy that residual anger that I had as a 6-year-old, I went to Cesar Chavez and pitched him the idea of a theater of, by, and for farm workers. We had to define ourselves. There was no form whatsoever. And there was no way to really hand out scripts to campesinos. Many of them couldn't even read and write. So we improvised everything. I learned improvisational techniques working with the San Francisco Mime Troupe, performing in the parks in the 60s. And the thing is that I took these experiences and put them to work in the fields in the middle of the grape strike. It wasn't easy for me to pitch to Cesar Chavez at the beginning. I was a little embarrassed. He might think it was a silly idea, but as it turned out, it really worked. It was, theater became a weapon. Theater became a way to actualize the dreams and hopes and fears of the farm workers. And they began then to invite us to tour, and pretty soon we're on the road. Within 2 years, we're in New York City on our first national tour for the Great Boycott, performing at the Newport Folk Festival, and also at the Village Gate Theater in the East Village in New York, being essentially reviewed by the New York Times and other things within 2 years, because it was an idea whose time had come, a workers' theater. And in that sense, then I began to relate to the history of theater in this country and how, together with the Black movement, which gave us the Free Southern Theater about 2 years before the Teatro came along. And I got to know the people that started the Black Southern Theater, the Free Southern Theater in the South, John O'Neill, over the years. And so I saw myself as part of a whole movement. When we finally made it to Europe, to the Nancy World Theater Festival in Nancy, France, I discovered that the directors of that place, Jean-Louis Barrault, I don't know if you know these names, famous actor in Europe, famous filmmaker. And the thing is that I realized that there was a whole generation that after World War II had decided that the world could not do another world war, and they needed to use the arts. And so I got tremendous help coming from Paris and from New York, who saw the Teatro Campesino and gave us help. And people in the United States that eventually began to help us. We became part of a whole wave of change from the whole world. We suddenly found ourselves that we were an isolated little troupe coming out of the fields in Delano. We were part of a whole movement from around the world. It didn't change our need to be in our own roots, in our own community, but you'll discover that when you go out into the world to do what you must do, that there are people all over the world that will connect with you. And it comes from all backgrounds, all colors, all backgrounds, all languages. Black liberation is our liberation. Women's liberation is our liberation. Gay liberation is our liberation. Trans liberation is our liberation. White liberation is our liberation. Tú eres mi otro yo. This is the basic Mayan principle that we have extracted from our study of the Mayan culture. Tú eres mi otro yo. In lak ech. If I love and respect you, I love and respect myself. If I do harm to you, I do harm to myself. And that's the essence of theater, that you form community. Theater is the creator of community, and community is the creator of theater. Where else can you gather? You gather in church, which is part theater. You gather in rallies. You gather in protests. You gather in communal dances. But the thing about performance and live theater is that you gather to express the communal heart of your community. And the ideas that bond us together, the ideas that carry us forward, the ideas that are in fact creators of our community. And that is a principle that we still practice. We're in San Juan Bautista. We've been all over. San Juan Bautista, of course, is on that side of Gilroy, south of Gilroy. We've been there in San Juan for over 50 years. Our packing shed theater is our pride and joy. One, because we own it. It's the house that Zoot Suit built. It's the house that the successors of the play allowed us to buy so that no one can raise the rent on us. So we're a nonprofit organization that doesn't face the danger of having the rent raised on them. So we survive. Doesn't mean that we don't have termites and that it isn't a packing shed. It's a packing shed. But you know, it's home to us. And it's poetic justice in a way. The fact that in order to succeed, you don't need to be in a rascacielos, you know, in a big skyscraper with all of the fancy things that you need. You need to be where you need to be, where people can have access to you. That is the root of El Teatro Campesino, and to some extent, that is the root of Chicano theater, that we must remain rooted to our own community. As long as we're there, relating to la raza, relating to the plebe, we will continue to keep our heart beating and breathing. And let me just say that there's a poem that we relate to that, because our studies of Mayan culture, I have a book called Vibrant Being, the Theater of the Sphere, the Vibrant Being, which is based on the Mayan sacred calendar. That's another talk altogether, but there are 4 columns: the body, the heart, the mind, and the spirit or the soul. We need to, each of those 5 steps, son 20 pasos de Dios, they call them. But we need to practice that. So body-wise, we still relate to our farm worker reality. Farm workers can do this, you know what I mean? You learn all your life, if you've been a farm worker, you have to do stuff that football athletes can't do. You have NFL players going out there to the fields, they'll break their butts, man. What our mothers and grandmothers have done out there in the fields, grown men cannot do. We carry the weight of labor. Why? Because we're strong. But anyway, working the body, using the body, the mind, the body is really part of our acting technique. Not just to sit around on chairs and talk. That's not theater. Theater is movement. Theater is action. And I can do this. I'm 84, kids. Okay, so there we go, right? And you can do this. And the thing is, the other is heart, corazón. Corazón is really important. Nawi Olin, you know, the 4 movement begins in the heart. And so protect your heart. Protect your heart. The things that you love, don't sell out. Stay true to what's in your heart. That little 6-year-old that wanted to do paper mache, that's still there. That's my heart. And the mind is also incredible. What we can do. It's interesting that one of the symbols of the Mayans had in the sacred calendar was monkey. It goes back to my monkey story, because monkeys, we call them wise sapiens, you know, Homo sapiens, wise monkeys. We're all monkeys in that sense. It's the consciousness of being, the consciousness of subconscious, the consciousness of creation. And then the last column is about the soul or the spirit. You have to believe in something greater than yourself. We're all mortal. You know, we're calaveras. Each of us has a calavera inside, just like in Coco, you know. And if you saw Coco, I was the bald tío, in Coco. But the thing is, we first did Dia de los Muertos in San Juan Bautista in 1971. And out of that connection has come a whole movement. I couldn't believe it, what's happened to Dia de los Muertos. We didn't invent Dia de los Muertos. It's been there for thousands of years in Mexico, but we celebrated it here because no one celebrated Dia de los Muertos. So that became part of our gesture. So Dia de los Muertos requires, the column, the soul, requires that you represent and you respect Mother Earth and women and empower women in their total humanity, not just as our mothers, not just as our sisters, but as powerful human beings and partners. My partner and I have been together for over 50 years. And she's the other half of my brain, she's the other half of my heart, you know what I'm saying? And so empower yourself by finding the partner, that you can live with. It's not easy, we're all human, we all have our quirks, but the fact is that love of whatever gender, love is what motivates us to live and enjoy and respect life. So let's go back to Menya and the creative spirit, crear, to believe, to create, to do with love and pain. That's a Mayan thought. Theater is the creator of community. Community is the theater creator of theater. And also in Lakesh. These are all principles that are inherent in our work and that we share. I want to close with a poem in three languages. In Nahuatl, as it was written by Prince Netzahualcoyotl before the coming of Columbus. The other is in Spanish and then in English, the same poem. Here it is in Nahuatl. Train mash tikilamikia kanma chinemian moyolo ikti moyol se semana a week patiquika in tlaltikpa kanmach titlal tio. If you speak Nahuatl, then you understand. In Spanish, ¿qué era lo que acaso tu mente hallaba? ¿Dónde andaba tu corazón? Por esto das tu corazón a cada cosa. Sin rumbo lo llevas. Vas destrozando tu corazón. Sobre la tierra, ¿acaso puedes ir en pos de algo? Now in English, what is it that your mind was looking for? Where's your heart? For this you give your heart to everything? You are destroying your heart. On this earth, do you suppose that you can go in search of anything and find it? And that's the message. America, Raza, my community, my brothers and sisters, find your heart and find the meaning of your life.
Oh my goodness, give it up for Luis Valdez. So I know many of you have questions for the legendary Luis Valdez. I have a couple of students in line, so I'm going to start there. Before I do that, I have an announcement, and I want to share with you my colleague, Patrick Leon. His parents met in the fields. He's from Sanger, he's from the Valley. His father is Chinese, his mother is Mexican. So he was talking about that unity, and they met in the fields. And the reason he couldn't be here is because he's with his daughter. And he sent us a message that his grandson was born healthy today, as you were speaking. So I think there's something cosmic there. That's going to be a special child. So I want to turn it over to questions. I got a couple students that I'd like to start with, if you don't mind. So I would like to start with Misael.
Hello, my name is Misael Villamejia, and my question is, we are wondering about your work with Cesar Chavez in particular. He gets a lot of credit, but we now know that he was flawed and had some problematic views about undocumented workers. Can you talk about your stance on this?
Yeah, I've heard that criticism, and I was there when it was happening. The fact is that the problem of farm labor is that there's so many people that work in the fields out of desperation, particularly if they come across the border. And Cesar was very loyal to the raza, He in no way looked down on anybody. There were people there in the union that were a little more vocal, but the fact is that it was a decision that was desperate because we were just starting the strike. and we were being flooded by strike breakers. The growers, who never gave a damn anyway, were sending buses down to the Mexican border, opening the doors, and the Border Patrol looked the other way while undocumented people kept coming into the buses, and they were busing them all the way from Tijuana, and in some cases, all the way from El Paso to Delano to break the strike. Now, I know that because I was there with all of the campesinos putting our bodies on the line to stop the buses, to try to give them leaflets and to say, you don't need to come to Delano. Please go somewhere else to work. But the growers were using people. And so Cesar got angry in a couple of cases, and he used a word or two, you know, but it wasn't out of hatred of our own people, far from it, you know. Dolores was a little more diplomatic about that, but the fact is that the language changed, you know, instead of calling them mojados or esquiroles, you know, we started calling them visitantes. As a matter of fact, I even wrote one verse that I had to change because I saw the impact, the negative impact it was having. It's from Huelga en General. Y de Nuevo León y Texas han venido sin vergüenzas, muertos de hambre por frijoles, was the line. And that became, y mandan enganchadores para engañar trabajadores que se vendan por frijoles. You see the change? So we had to watch our language. People do get angry, you know, and you could see the fear sometimes in the campesinos that we discovered in the fields, because they didn't know whether we were going to beat them up or not, you know. They didn't know we were nonviolent. They didn't know, all we wanted was just to talk to them. So there was a lot of that happening. I don't accuse people of being dumb or not knowing, if working out of desperation. My parents were there, you know. When I grew up, when I was growing, maybe some of you had this experience. When I was growing up, we never knew who was going to be sleeping on our living room floor. I mean, we were living in barns. I mean, we weren't living in big fancy houses because overnight, it was an underground railroad of campesinos coming to work, and they were undocumented, and they just needed a place to land. And my mom and dad would allow the floor to sleep. When we marched to Sacramento, the campesinos did the same thing with the marchers, you know. We started with 100 people, but that grew to 10,000. So we had a lot of people looking for places to stay, and they would sleep on people's floors. That's how I met Lupe. Her mom and dad would, in Cutler, one of the little towns that we came to, were housing marchers, you know, sleeping on their floors. And so that attitude was there in Cesar's family, that it was a big family, but they were very supportive of people from the border. You know, they came from Yuma, they came from San Luis Sonora. They were right there. Cesar's method of talking was very sonoroense. For instance, he'd come in and say, ¿Cómo están, muchachos? You know, this is the soft muchachos. How's the show today? I mean, so he identified most directly with the undocumented. Okay? Come in. All right. Vamos. Yeah.
My name is Daniel de la Trinidad.
Daniel de la Trinidad. What a lovely name. Okay.
Thank you. So like with a lot of people who pursue higher education, they tend to go for more, you know, STEM majors, more like, you know, like the medical field and stuff. And I know you started out as a math and physics major at Don Jose State and then decided to pursue theater and the arts. So can you talk about how you found your path and what advice do you have for students who are trying to find their path?
Well, thank you for that. I think my belief is that STEM should be STEAM. They need to add the A. You know, there's more power in STEAM anyway. The STEM is STEAM powered. But the arts are essential more and more in our time. You don't get technology without art. You know, anything that's digital, anything that's online, anything that's on the internet has been created by art. That's how you have even the invention of the language of the internet has been put together by artists, symbols and so forth. And so it's a big mistake. The trouble is that the arts have been viewed as the privilege of the rich. the plaything of the rich, that when they get rich enough, then they pay for artists and they sponsor. This is all great art is full of names, the Medicis and all the people that were wealthy to this day, you know, Bill Gates and others that contribute to the arts. But more than that, I've never believed that. I believe that arts are a human necessity. And I go back to my roots. I go back to all of the piñata makers in Mexico, you know, working with paper mache, making piñatas in order to earn their living, or making baskets, or making whatever. Those are artists. And so in that sense, how do you apply art then to the scientific world? And I'm grateful that I was a math major, quite frankly, because being a math major helped me to become a filmmaker. You know, you need more than a knowledge of trigonometry in order to be able to figure out your angles as a director. But when you get into photography and you're dealing with the quality of light and the angles that are most dynamic, and also all of that machinery that goes with it, it helps to have a scientific bend. And if you're a doctor, that's a surgeon, un cirujano, they better have the skillful hands of an artist, man. Because I mean, we have a friend that was operated recently and on her heart, and the doctor cut an artery, a mistake, and almost killed her, you know, under the circumstances. She survived, thank God. But what is that? That's a human mistake, right? Now, but you need artistry. Las manos tienen que ser manos de artista in order to be a surgeon or to be a musician. And it's male and female. Women are much better at certain professions because they're so much more skilled in terms of the finesse of the hands. Women's hands have saved humanity more often than not just as midwives and not just as cooks, but as just caretakers of life itself, of children, of sick people, of whatever, cooking. You know, it is only one aspect of what's possible. They become musicians, they become scientists. And well, it goes on. Does that answer your question? STEAM, not STEM, STEAM. The arts are essential. Okay. Oh, let me say one thing. Art, what is art? What is art? Thou art.
And we have time for one last
question. Se va el tren, se va el tren. Okay.
Hi, my name is Sebastián Grimoldi Requejo.
What was that again?
Sebastián Grimoldi Requejo.
Uy, okay, Sebastián,
yeah,
great.
Imagine on the DMV.
I know.
But, so I'm a film major.
Yeah.
When I was on Peru, I used to be a business major, and I really appreciate what you just said about there's no math without art, there's no science without art. When I came here, I decided to change for film major because it's what I always wanted to do. It's what made me stop being a shy person, you know. And before you were talking about identity and representation in Hollywood, and yesterday I was making my investigation, and I saw that on 2022, only 6% of speaking characters in Hollywood films were Hispanic or Latinos. And one of the things I want to do as a film major and on my career is what you're doing right now. It's show my culture, show my family on my film, show my culture and to other people, so they can feel identified. But people that are not from my culture can also see that we're more than what they think we are sometimes. And I wanted to know your opinion of how Hollywood is representing us right now, because although as you said, we are a really big community, and each year we are becoming bigger and bigger. We are still being really misrepresented on films, and I wanted to know your opinion about that.
Well, I agree with you. We're not being represented at all. I mean, 25 to 30% of the profit of movies is coming from Latino audiences. We're still going to the movies. Okay, other groups are not. And maybe because they can afford streaming and they can stay home, you know, and we still like going to the movies. We like the communal aspect of it, maybe. But the fact is that has not respected at all in Hollywood. Hollywood at this point is in transition. It's always been a bit of a mess. But the thing is that it isn't enough just to be an actor, writer, and director. You also have to be a producer. Now, what does that mean? Basically, it means you have to go out and get the money, and people like Orson Welles wasted many years of their lives hustling for money. And it doesn't matter. Francis Ford Coppola right now, a friend of mine, right, is going through all kinds of problems just getting his movie, which is already done, which he self-financed at $120 million. As a matter of fact, I was part of the readings. He did readings for 20 years, and I came to San Francisco to his restaurant and read with John Boyd and Sean Penn and others, Neb Campbell, and I was one of the readers. He asked me, "Can you do a New York accent?" I was like, "I can't," But I was reading one of the main characters that De Niro and some of the others have done. I don't know who played it in the movie. I'm anxious to see the movie, but I can't get a hold of it, because it hasn't been distributed yet. But if he can have problems, you can bet your boots that Chicanos are going to have problems. Now, there are some people, Eva Longoria is doing very well, with her movie, God bless her. And she just got $50 million, that from Jeff Bezos, perhaps to scatter and to spread out in the Latino community and help young filmmakers make movies. I think that our movies are ridiculously overpriced. $100 million movie, it's ridiculous, man. You don't need $100 million to make a movie. Spread that into 10 movies, $10 million a movie, and give everybody else a break. Maybe some of those will make money. La Bamba had a budget of 6 to 8 million. We started at 6, went to 8 million, but it made over $100 million in 1987. Today, I mean, that would translate into, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars. It's still making money, right? Not oodles of money, but I mean, it's making some money because it's still viable. We still get residuals. But the thing is, so does Zoot Suit for all that finally after all these years. But the thing is that it's a constant struggle and you're in competition with all kinds of people. I would say, hold on to your principles. You're going to be hit with everything. Once you get a green light, then the problem is casting. How do you cast it? And then you are looking to spur ahead Latino talent. It's not always easy to find the right people. I've been fortunate to have discovered Eddie Olmos, for all that. He's still a dear friend of mine, and we're working on another project together, but we're in that rare position of having to look for financing. He's got the CAA, that's the Creative Artists Agency, backing him. And even with them, I mean, it's still tough going. But the most important ingredient for a farm worker is the resilience and stubbornness of the determination to get their movie done. We just hosted the one night of the Popper Jasper International Film Festival based in Morgan Hill at the Teatro a couple of nights ago. And we saw some wonderful films. Unbroken Sky, I recommend to you. It's a short film, but it's the story of Dr. Francisco Jimenez. It's making the rounds now in the festivals. I think it's coming to San Francisco. But if you hear about it, check it out, even if it's finally on television. But it's a wonderful story about campesinos because it's him, it's his story based on his books. Part of the way to get a movie done is to start with the text, start with the story, tell yourself the story, get it written down, and then go from there. One of my working techniques is to start with a play. I define the characters. Valley of the Heart, for instance, which is now a screenplay and circulating in Hollywood, started out as a play that we did in our little packing shed warehouse in San Juan Bautista. This is back in 2013 when we started. And we got a grant and put it up. I don't have to ask permission from Hollywood to do whatever. I do what I want to do. You know what I'm saying? And then I go there, and if they want to make money, then let's work together. I tell a lot of producers, you're selling yourself short, I said, because I can make money for you. If money is what you want, I can reach an audience and make money. That still isn't enough in some cases. As one producer told me some years ago when I was circulating in Hollywood, they said, "You're too articulate," which means you're too uppity. We don't want to fund you. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean for everybody. I've had a lot of people come to me and say, "We want to support you. We want to back you up." And so we have those supports, and we're still making movies, okay? I still have more movies than I will ever produce because that's life, That's life. But I leave the territory to the next generation of filmmakers. Some of you may find incredible worldwide fame and fortune. I hope you tell honest stories. I hope that you follow your heart and tell a story that is true to you. That's what ultimately sells. It's a story of how people eat breakfast. It's how people get up in the morning. It's how we all suffer the same tiny little tragedies and triumphs in all our lives, you know? That is the storytelling that we need, and the detail of life. If another way to become a filmmaker is become a photographer, you know? Ed's a photographer, but learn how to get the right image, you know? Or write the story, put it into words that will eventually translate into a screenplay. Or if you're an actor, strive to become a star. We need more stars. We don't have them, you know? I've launched a number of careers through my work. I've been fortunate to have been able to tap into their talents. And then they're on their own. They have to go, Eddie Olmos, Dharma Martinez, Lou Diamond Phillips, you know, Mike Gomez, Tony Plana. I mean, the list is Lupe Ontiveros. A lot of people that have made their mark in Hollywood started in my plays. Josefina Lopez, you know, who's a screenwriter herself. She was 17 years old when we produced her first plays in San Juan Bautista. Start where you are. Don't wait for the world to come to you. Start now. Start with whatever you've got to work with and make it last. Go for broke, okay? Dale, órale.
Guys, let's hear it one last time for Luis Valdez. ¡Viva! ¡Se puede! ¡Sí se puede! ¡Sí se puede! ¡Sí se puede! If you didn't hear that on Zoom, he said, que voten. I would like to invite our two student speakers up to the front. Kimberly and Raul have some gifts for Luis and Lupe. So we would like to present you with our Puente Cycle 29 t-shirts as a thank you gesture for being here. And we have a tote bag with some gifts with some Puente swag on it. And I'm going to close out. So first of all, I want to give my shout out and thank you to Kimberly and Raul. Let's hear it for them one more time. Guys, this event and events like it would not be possible without countless hours of dedication from this Puente team. I want to give a huge thank you to Bri Guerra. Give it up. I want to thank Cristina Gomez for always supporting and always being there. Shout out to Profe Patrick Leong, who became a grandfather today. Special thanks to the counselors. You know, I love you, Maria and Brenda. Give it up. To our brand new professor of English, DVC Puente English, Monica Olmedo. This is the first of many. To all the mentors who are here, I know there are mentors here supporting your Puentistas, your mentees. Many of you are giving back to the community. I want to thank you for that. I want to give a thanks to Emily Moss, part of the Puente team. Dr. Albert Ponce, give it up. Professor Juan Huerta Villicana teaches in early childhood education. He is one of the tri-chairs of Dreamers, a Dreamer's Life. And honestly, he always is down to help out when we need him. He's helping with the technology. He's helped out with food in the past. So we thank you for your support, Juanito. We've got a few VIPs in the house. I want to give a special shout out to board member Fernando Sandoval. I want to thank David Martinez for his support in being here. I want to give a shout out to Professor Ed Trujillo, who taught Here at DVC, taught drama for 27 years. We're very thankful for your support for being here. We're always thankful to food services, our custodial staff, everyone who helps out to make this possible. If any of these topics that were mentioned today resonated with you or were important to you, then please consider taking an ethnic literature course, an ethnic studies course. The day after tomorrow, we have an ethnic studies summit downstairs in the bistro. I got it. Downstairs in the bistro. So that's from 8:30 to 3. Please be sure to come through to the Ethnic Studies Summit, and shout out to the Ethnic Studies Work Group. That's Danny Cornejo. Yeah. Dr. Albert Ponce, Professor Lisa Ong, Dr. Sangani Yogi. And of course, we always want to thank our beloved DVC Puente team. So let's give it up for Counselor Lupe Danos, who's in the back. I want to thank all of Cycle 29 for your participation and dedication. Thank you to our Phase 3 Puentistas who are here as well. My name is Anthony Gonzalez, and one last time I want to give a huge thank you to the legendary Luis Valdez. Can't thank you enough for this.